Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are heading into some really fascinating, if unsettling, territory in human psychology.
We certainly are.
We're focusing on the Dark Triad, that's psychopathy, Machiavellianism, and narcissism. But, not just what these traits are, we're going much deeper into the cognitive machinery that, well, allows them to work.
Right. And the source material we're looking at today really forces us to confront this paradox about empathy.
A paradox. How so?
Well, evolutionarily speaking, empathy is supposed to be the glue that holds society together. It's incredibly resource-intensive for our brains, but it helps us cooperate.
Okay.
But then you have these Dark Triad strategies, which are often very successful, and they seem to be enabled by having less empathy. It's a real evolutionary head-scratcher.
So the researchers wanted to dissect this. They focused on two main social skills, starting with cognitive empathy.
Yes, and it's really important to be specific here. Cognitive empathy is the ability to understand what someone else is thinking or feeling. It's a controlled, deliberate process.
So it's not feeling their pain, it's knowing what they're feeling.
Exactly. You can read the room. You can infer intentions without taking on the emotional cost yourself. It's a critical tool for consolation, for influence, and yes, for manipulation.
It's social intelligence without the emotional baggage. And the second variable they looked at was dehumanization.
Right. And the definition they use is key. It's the failure to see another person as an active, intentional being with their own complex thoughts and feelings.
Like the example they used in the source, right? Treating a delivery driver like they're just part of the app.
Precisely. Like they're just an object, an extension of a service, not a person. You're stripping away their agency.
Okay, so this is where it gets really foundational. The researchers brought in this novel cognitive process, agency detection sensitivity, or ADS. What is that?
ADS is about as basic as social perception gets. It's the fundamental, almost instinctual ability to recognize that something in your environment is acting with intention, that it's goal-directed.
So how do you even test for that?
They used a really clever biological motion task. Basically, you watch these moving dots on a screen and have to decide if one group of dots is intentionally chasing the other. It's a pure test of perceiving agency.
So our mission for this deep dive is to see if maybe a flaw in this really basic ability, this agency detection, is the missing link that helps explain the exploitative patterns we see in the Dark Triad.
Exactly. And the study was huge, over 600 participants, so the data is pretty robust.
All right, let's get into the results.
Okay.
So prediction 1. How do these three traits stack up against cognitive empathy and dehumanization? The immediate takeaway seems to be that they are not all the same. Not at all.
That's the key finding right out of the gate. They are using completely distinct cognitive playbooks.
So let's start with psychopathy. I'm guessing this one was more or less what you'd expect.
It was, yeah. Psychopathy was consistently linked with lower cognitive empathy and with greater dehumanization. This fits perfectly with what we see in neuroscience. People high in psychopathy often show less activation in the parts of the brain that handle perspective taking. It just helps explain that, that classic lack of remorse.
But then we get to Machiavellianism. And this is where things get weird. The initial data showed they were actually poor mind readers, right?
Yes. At first glance, there was a negative correlation with cognitive empathy, which feels wrong. The master strategist who can't read people, it doesn't track.
So what happened?
This is where the analysis gets really elegant. The researchers statistically controlled for the overlap between the three traits. They isolated the unique signature of Machiavellianism.
And when they did that?
The whole picture flipped. Suddenly, Machiavellianism wasn't negatively related to cognitive empathy. It was significantly positively associated with it.
Wait, so the skilled manipulator is actually a better mind reader?
It seems so. They aren't socially deficient. They seem to possess this superior perspective-taking skill. But, and this is the kicker, they use it alongside a strong tendency for greater dehumanization.
Wow, so they can read you perfectly, which is precisely what allows them to dismiss you so effectively.
That's the implication. An incredibly potent combination.
And what about narcissism, the grandiose type specifically? It threw another wrench in the works.
It really did. Like psychopathy, it was linked to lower cognitive empathy. No huge surprise there. But its relationship with dehumanization was the complete opposite of the other two.
What did they find?
A negative association. So the more narcissistic a person was, the less they tended to dehumanize others. It completely breaks the Dark Triad pattern we were seeing.
Okay, so let's just summarize these profiles then. A psychopath is low empathy, high dehumanization.
Correct.
The Machiavellian is high empathy, high dehumanization.
The skilled, cynical operator, yes.
And the narcissist is low empathy, but also low dehumanization. Three totally different paths.
Exactly. 3 distinct ways to pursue self-interest.
So that brings us to the next big question. The role of that foundational skill, agency detection sensitivity, or ADS. The original hypothesis was pretty straightforward, right?
It was. The idea was that maybe all Dark Triad traits were linked to a basic deficit here.
Yeah.
That, maybe the reason they exploit people is because they don't see them as intentional agents in the first place.
And that prediction just fell flat.
Completely. There was no direct negative correlation. People high in psychopathy, Machiavellianism, or narcissism were, on average, just as good at the dot-chasing task as anyone else. Their basic perception was intact.
Why is the failure of a hypothesis so important here? What does that tell us?
It's hugely important because it changes where we look for the problem. If their basic perception, their ADS, is fine, but they still dehumanize others,
It means it's not a glitch in their perception.
it implies it's a choice. Or at least a failure of motivation or moral filtering happening further up the cognitive chain. They see you as an agent, but they are choosing to treat you like an object. It's an active disregard, not a passive failure to see.
That is a critical distinction. But the researchers didn't stop there. They looked for interactions between the variables.
And this is where they found the real breakthrough. It's a bit complex, but it's fascinating.
Lay it on us.
They found that the negative link between psychopathy and cognitive empathy was significantly stronger for people who also scored lower on that basic agency detection test.
Okay, break that down.
It means if you have psychopathic traits, so your empathy is already low, that problem becomes much, much worse if your foundational ability to perceive agency is also a bit less efficient. It's a double hit.
A uniquely toxic combination. And this was only for psychopathy.
Only for psychopathy. The interaction wasn't significant for Machiavellianism or narcissism. Yeah, it points to something very specific happening with the psychopathic mind.
These kinds of divergences really demand a bigger framework. And that's where something like life history theory comes in.
Exactly. Life history theory gives us a lens to understand these as different fast strategies. Behavioral patterns that might have evolved in harsh or unpredictable environments.
Where it pays to be opportunistic.
Right. If you can't rely on long-term cooperation, you prioritize immediate personal gains. And a key part of that is to stop investing in psychologically expensive things like genuine empathy. And we are seeing 3 very different ways they manage that budget.
Let's start with the Machiavellian mind reader. It seems counterintuitive that they'd invest so much in high cognitive empathy if they're running a fast strategy.
But you can think of it as an adaptive specialization. They pour their resources into one specific tool, detached perspective taking. They know exactly what makes you tick, which helps them with, sorting targets, timing their deception.
All without the messy cost of actually feeling what you feel.
Precisely. No costly effective resonance. Their resource is pure cognitive sharpness, aimed entirely outward for manipulation.
The narcissist's strategy, on the other hand, seems almost pointed inward. Low cognitive empathy, but also low dehumanization. What's the function there?
The theory is that this is a narcissistic protective buffer. Their reduced empathy isn't really for manipulating you, it's for protecting their own fragile, inflated self-image.
How does that work?
Well, think about it. If you're a grandiose narcissist, you need constant admiration. If you had excellent cognitive empathy, you'd be painfully aware of all the times people were annoyed with you or judging you or didn't like you.
That would puncture the bubble.
It would shatter it. So their low empathy acts like an immune system. It insulates them from a social reality they can't handle. It's a strategy of internal self-fortification, not external exploitation.
Which brings us back to psychopathy and that really crucial interaction they found. This points to what they call the deficit-driven strategy.
Yes. This is maybe the most chilling, but also the most efficient strategy of the 3. It's all about conserving cognitive energy.
What do you mean by that?
Think of your brain like a phone with a limited battery. Empathy, complex moral thinking. Those are the apps that drain your battery the fastest. They are computationally expensive.
Okay.
Now, if you already have psychopathic tendencies, and on top of that, your basic cognitive hardware, your ADS, is a little less efficient, it just becomes smarter from a resource perspective to not even try to run those expensive programs.
They lean into their own deficits because it's easier. It saves energy.
It saves a ton of energy. They bypass the effort required for moral reasoning altogether. They take the cognitive path of least resistance to get what they want in the short term. It suggests that for them, this isn't just an inability, it's an efficient resource-saving trade-off.
So the big picture here, the core takeaway, is that we absolutely cannot treat the Dark Triad as a single entity.
Not at all.
You have three distinct strategies. The Machiavellian, using high cognitive skill for external manipulation. The narcissist, using low empathy for internal protection. And the psychopath, who may be running a deficit-driven resource-saving program, especially when their basic social perception is also impaired.
That's a perfect summary. It's a map of three very different ways of navigating the social world. And that last one, the idea of resource conservation, it points us directly to the next logical step for this research.
If it's all about saving mental energy, how do you test for that? How do you challenge a strategic effort avoider?
You put their brain under strain. The next step would be to run experiments where you put highly psychopathic individuals under high cognitive load.
What would that look like?
For example, you'd ask them to do a really demanding memory task, while at the same time giving them a moral reasoning problem to solve. A dual task paradigm.
And the theory would be,
if the resource conservation theory holds, their performance on the moral task should just plummet when their brain is busy with something else. It would show that when they're forced to choose where to spend their limited mental energy, they strategically abandon the costly effort of empathy.
that's fascinating. So the final question we're left with for you to think about is this. Does that kind of strategic effort avoidance mean they are fundamentally unable to care? Or does it just mean they've decided very efficiently that for them, caring is never worth the cost?